Mr. Ball's necrosis, was Freddy Krueger really meant to come to Forsaken? Yes, Freddy Krueger was meant to come to Forsaken as a killer. Shush, 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 shush. Listen, I have a tale to tell all of you, and you need to listen closely, because I can't hear my own thoughts when you're over here screaming and yelling and freaking out. So, now that I have your attention and you're all nice and quiet, yes, Freddy Krueger was meant to come to Forsaken as a killer. Now, you're probably immediately just going to think, oh yeah, it makes sense that Freddy would come to Forsaken because Jason's from Area 51, and Freddy Krueger's also in Survive and Kill the Killers in Area 51, so yeah, of course Freddy Krueger would come to the game. No, that is not the reason that I wanted Freddy Krueger to be a killer. Freddy, upon me doing a lot of research, has more history in Roblox than I thought. Frankly, maybe more history than Jason. So, a long time ago, there used to be an old Nightmare on Elm Street Roblox horror story game. It was kind of resemblant to Bloody Mary. So if you ever played that, or you played Hospital Nightmare, it was kind of resemblant of those. You walk through this area, and you know, there's like scary skyboxes, there's characters normally giving you dialogue, telling you what's going on, and eventually you will encounter the antagonist. There's never really a moment where there's like any actual like major horror, like running or like, you know, chase sequences or anything like that. It's normally just going through the storyboard thing, and there's like jump scares, or maybe there's like blood, stuff like that. It never really had any moments where you actually had to run. But Freddy Krueger has a lot of history on Roblox in a couple of different ways, actually. One of them being the story mode that I just described. There are some other things that Freddy was involved in, however, and there was one game I was really trying to find. I was trying so hard to find it because I remember it when I played it as a kid, but I couldn't find it. But there was a game on Roblox where you would be on this map that was supposed to be resemblant to Elm Street, which is where, you know, Freddy kills his victims. And there was a Freddy Krueger NPC alongside 4 other NPCs next to him. This was a custom take done for Freddy in Roblox only. It had nothing to do with his actual media. And it was these pitch black figures that I believe also wore his sweater. Or maybe they just had like a different color palette. But they were called Nightmare Minions. They were these bald characters with the vampire face. And they pretty much did the same thing as Freddy. They ran around and their claw one-tapped you. And, you know, you not only had to deal with Freddy, but you had to deal with Freddy's minions. And I was really trying to find that game because I wanted to tie that into Freddy's media as well. But I unfortunately was unable to find it. But Freddy has much more history on Roblox than even I ever thought. He was probably one of the first horror movie slashers to have their own story game, like in old Roblox. I think he's the only killer who had their own story game. Nobody else had a story game. There was no Jason story game. There was no Chucky or anything like that. None that I could find footage of, at least. But Freddy having this is like really shocking. So, you're probably wondering to yourself, well, what was Freddy going to do? So, as you know, Freddy's entire gimmick when it comes to his movies and his power is his dream world. He waits for his victims to go to sleep, and then he attacks them in their sleep, because whatever he does to them in their dreams, he does to them in real life. So if he chops your nose off or he slits your balls, you're going to feel a slit on your balls when you wake up. So, stuff like that. Freddy has the dream world, which is where he is this all-powerful deity who can pretty much do whatever he wants. He thrives on fear, and pretty much that's what he would go off of. He would go off on your biggest fears, and that's how he would gain an advantage on you, by picking something you're afraid of and using it to make you already feel afraid, which makes him more powerful, and you get the gist. So how was that going to apply to Forsaken? So, Freddy's ability was going to be resemblant to that of how he plays out in Dead by Daylight. Mainly just with, you know, having the dream world, and survivors will passively fall asleep needing to be woken up. It wasn't really anything further than that. Like, wasn't like one-to-one with his ability in Dead by Daylight. It was just survivors would passively fall asleep when encountering Freddy, and they would have to be woken up. And Freddy would be more powerful when he's in the dream world. So, Freddy was going to be a fairly evil killer to go against in terms of his abilities. You know, again, regarding the dream world, and survivors were going to be falling asleep, and there would be a lot of teamwork required to wake one another up and stay out of the dream world as much as possible. Because, you know, it's not good if you all are in the dream world. You're probably already asking yourself, well, what if everyone is in the dream world? How would they wake up? I never really got that far, because again, Freddy was sort of a rough concept, but I still had a lot of ideas for him. But he was still a rough concept. There was definitely going to be ways that survivors could wake one another up, even if they were all in the dream world. It probably would also vary on if you took damage to some extent. Like, there would be a certain health you could reach where it would automatically wake you up. Something of that sort. But there was going to be ways that survivors could wake one another up, even if all survivors are currently in the dream world. We had discussed a lot of things regarding Freddy's ability, and it didn't really go anywhere, but it's just really fun to talk about because truthfully, he was going to be a fairly interesting killer. There was a portal ability concept where it was stated he could traverse between little rifts in the map. So Freddy was potentially going to have some teleportation, which would be, you know, interesting because again, it's Freddy, and you know how horror movie killers are. When you look away, they could teleport to the other side of the map and then they'll teleport right behind you. You know, Freddy was able to do that. He was able to teleport all over the place. We had also said that maybe he could be a setup kind of killer that's slow in the real world but has his power greatly enhanced in the dream world. And his goal is to get survivors to fall asleep and enter the dream world as much as possible. Kind of like that. He was going to feel more powerless when survivors are outside of the dream world, but then once they are in, that is where he gains the upper hand and he is a great threat. I think that was going to be very fun. Your main goal, staying out of the dream world as much as you possibly can, because otherwise you're going to feel a lot of pressure. That's one thing I really like about asymmetrical horror games, is when I'm playing, not only am I thinking about what I want to do, but I'm thinking about how the player is going to react. You want to gain pressure, because while you may not be able to see the people behind their screens, you can tell when a certain thing you do will inflict pressure on the team. Like, for example, I'm playing Dead by Daylight. I managed to injure all of the survivors, meaning all of them can go down in one hit. That is applying pressure. They are all currently trying to heal because they are afraid of getting downed in one hit because everyone is injured. They are afraid of something bad happening because they're refusing to heal. Gaining a pressure advantage is something you want, because then survivors are going to strive away from the original objective and focus more on trying to help one another, which is when, again, you already have the upper hand. That's the type of stuff Freddy would have, and that's why the survivor's goal would be to stay out of the dream world, because if they don't, then Freddy's going to get a major advantage, which is going to apply pressure on the team, and, you know, they won't be as coordinated. Pressure is a very scary thing when it comes to asymmetrical horror games. There was also the discussion of unique objectives being in the dream world, which could entice survivors to risk their life in exchange for more time being taken off, meaning that there would be some actions you'd have to do that would come with a price, but your time being out of the dream world would be increased. So you'd spend more time out of the dream world, which would, you know, make you feel a lot safer. I had said that he would be a killer that's intimidating when you're awake, but also when you're asleep. The upside being when you're awake, it's definitely more strenuous for him to catch you at times, but he's also harder to track. Maybe like when you're awake, his terror radius is reduced, or his terror radius remains the same, but the music intensity barely alters, so you can't tell if he's near you or not, leaving you paranoid. Stuff like that. Freddy was going to be one that really messed with your mind, a trickster type killer, having all these sorts of abilities to give him an advantage both out and in the dream world. Obviously, again, his major advantage being in the dream world, but still being a bit of an intimidating killer when he's out of it. The only other thing I would take from Dead by Daylight and possibly put onto Freddy is, if you remember, when you see Freddy outside of the dream world in Dead by Daylight, he sort of phases in and out, like full transparency. You can still hear his terror radius, but he will have times where he is just completely invisible for a split second, and then you will see him reform. I feel like that is something I would also do for Freddy, because it definitely would be an interesting factor of him, and again, as I said, make him more difficult to track, while also the terror radius is disorienting you a little bit, because again, while you're out of the dream world, it's definitely more of an annoying process for him to get you. So having those small advantages when survivors are out of the dream world is still nice, because again, they may not have enough reaction time, or they may not see you coming. It would be like a passive in-out phasing, kind of like that. So I think that that would be very interesting for Freddy's character. Nothing more after this, unfortunately, had really been discussed. Freddy didn't exactly go anywhere. He just probably would have been, you know, another future killer in the roster. But he definitely would have been an awesome addition, especially with, you know, Jason being a killer at the time. There was definitely going to be some sort of dynamic between the two. Not just the usual, Freddy versus Jason, they hate each other. I definitely was going to write some thorough lore on why they hate each other in this universe. Not just carrying it directly from their movie about how they have that rivalry. I always view the Roblox variants of these characters to be completely different from how they are in their original film. Because, I mean, come on, Jason has a chainsaw. He has never had a chainsaw in his life, so he's already completely different from his original character. Freddy Krueger, you know, he just looks how you'd imagine Freddy Krueger to look, but I still think it would be much more interesting to completely alter these characters' personalities, but still keep them loyal in a way. It's kind of hard to explain, but I definitely would have had very unique lore written for both of them, explaining why they're here and why they hate each other, instead of just, you know, the crappy movie plot, because don't even get me started on the fucking movie. It's my most favorite horror movie, but in terms of the plot is horrible. But yeah, I don't really have much else to talk about this because Freddy Krueger didn't really go anywhere. He was just, you know, he was definitely discussed for like a day or two, and we kind of had the whole blueprints of his ability laid out, but it wasn't enough for him to, you know, be on the road. Freddy probably is never coming to the game now, especially with Jason now getting replaced, so Freddy is just in the dust. If anybody got confused with Forsaken Wiki, I will real quick inform you, no, it was not going to be based off of the 2010 Freddy. I say that because the Freddy image used on Forsaken Wiki is the Dead by Daylight render. It was not going to be that Freddy. That Freddy fucking sucks. He's not funny. He looks ugly. Like, it's just this overall edgelord retcon of Freddy that I absolutely hate. It would have been based off of the Robert Englund Freddy, who manages to be funny and scary at the same time, while also having his moments where he's just dark. It's more scary when a character that you know for being comedic while killing people just goes dark. But the execution in the 2010 reboot, no, we don't count that. That was dog shit. That was not the Freddy we knew. That's a shitty Freddy. But yeah, it is not the 2010 Freddy. It was going to be more based off of the Robert Englund Freddy, the classic, the boy. I'm a horror movie nerd, and I was not going to fucking let that shitty ass Freddy be the one that our Krueger was going to be based off of. So yeah, just wanted to talk about how Freddy was going to be a future killer for Forsaken if you didn't know that. But yeah, that's really it. So